Hello, and first of all, thank you very much for choosing to join this course. It's going to be a little bit different from other courses that you've taken, but it's necessary because um, the timing wasn't going to work out for everybody, and also there are some things about my schedule that make it difficult to uh, deliver 8 in-person classes in the evenings. What I would like to say is I think that the course that we're going to go through will be, above all else, thorough, and that we're going to have the opportunity for all of us to learn something new. Now, the whole point of this course is to prepare a group of teaching assistants, advanced teaching assistants, to work with a new pilot course in the Kikan Kyoik. So whether you do in fact end up working on this course or not, depending on your schedule, that's up to you, that's your decision. But this is a course that has never been offered before. We've never had a course where we have focused on trying to make or trying to help teaching assistants become better at teaching rather than just assisting. So the key point of this course is teaching, to consider various aspects of that professional aspect. So the entire background to this course is to try and encourage you to be team teachers. Now, team teaching doesn't have to be 50-50, doesn't have to be 60-40. It can, in some cases, be 95 or to 5% of the other person who is in the room. But the other person who is in the room going through the tasks that are being processed by the students needs to be aware, first and foremost, why these tasks are happening, why they've been decided. Now, you may have had some teaching experience in the past. Having spoken to the department about the people who are likely to take this course, I suspect that most of you have had some experience, whether you are teaching in a juku or you're teaching in classes, or someone, your supervising professor has requested that you take over some part of seminar duties. You have had some experience of this. What this course is designed to do is to try and put you in the role of the assistant teacher. Now, this might have been something that you have done in the past in high school or in junior high school, whether in Japan or in another country. But this is the outcome of the course that we want. We want people to feel comfortable facilitating a class. You will, of course, be given the materials. You will, of course, be given the directions. But if a teacher is not in the room, you feel comfortable doing that. The overview of the course that we're looking at for the 8 weeks of the course is this. Today's lesson focuses very much on the activity. The activity as it is defined, and I'll speak about it later as well, is something that could take 2 minutes, it could take 15 minutes, but there is a very clear focus to the reason that it's in the class. And one of the things that we're focusing on in the curriculum reform is that the activities that are embedded in the class are communicative. They're very much about the students being able to use the material that they have prepared before they come to class. We're looking at a structure that is what's called flipped. So the work that students might have done in the past in the classroom, for example, listening and reading, that's all done at home. What's done in the classroom is communicative and trying to increase their comfort and confidence in that area. Lesson 2, we'll look at the idea of the course and the overview of that. Number 3, we'll look at classroom-based activities. Lesson 4, we'll come back to the idea of the activity, mainly because you as teaching assistants will mainly be focused on the activity in the class. So a good communication between yourself and the teacher in the classroom will help the activities do well. It's lessons 5 and 8, and I'll come back to that in a minute, that we need to discuss. Like I said, we've never offered a course like this before, and we definitely haven't offered something similar to this online style of on-demand class either. Lesson 5, meaning that we have 4 weeks to discuss it, and lesson 8 for the final practicum, I will require you to be on campus at that time. However, we have a month to work out exactly how many people are doing the course and when is the most convenient time and where is the most convenient place. So what I will be doing after week 1, because I assume maybe another couple of people might join the course in this first week. After that, we will discuss as a group when we can all meet together to do the trial practicum meaning, of course, practice teaching, and the final practicum, which is the final practice teaching. I'll set you a series of tasks, and you have to complete those for the course. Lesson 6 is the curriculum, the idea of how to look at an absolute umbrella overview of how courses are put together. Then we start looking at the final task for this course. Lesson 7 is a review, and lesson 8 is the final practicum. So what I wanted to do for this week was to kind of give you an introduction to master's level teaching English as a foreign language, or teaching English as a second language. Okay, so the materials that we're going to be using are, this is a document that I have produced in relation to the 2 activities that I'm going to ask you to do in the course. This is going to be shared with you through Office 365. This is why I couldn't send it to you before, because I needed to know how many students were registered in the Moodle course. So if you have any colleagues, anyone else who is thinking about joining the course, please make sure that they are in the course during this week. It's only 8 weeks for a quarter-based course. So if they're not signed up yet, it's going to be very difficult for them to complete the course in time. So this document, which will be shared with you through a shared folder, looks something like this. You can any document or anything that I ask you to read or anything that I ask you to do, there's a folder that I will share with you, and that will be available to you very, very soon. The document matches what we're doing in the lesson itself. So there are 2 activities that I want you to do today. Given that this is an on-demand class, it's possible for you to not complete it within the week, but complete it within course time. However, the amount of work that I'm going to ask you to do, I would recommend that you do it within the week. Okay. Right. I hope that's a good enough explanation. But I think the explanation works best if we just work with the contents of the course. Okay. So if we're going to talk about the idea of the activity as the core of a course, we need to remember that language always exists in context. Activities always happen within a context. Context, of course, being French, con with text words. So that everything else around it exists in order to help people understand it. So it could be an activity, for example, a warm-up in a class. It's always short, it's always simple, it's always active. You're trying to get students engaged in the environment of the class. It could be topic related, content, language, communicative. So this might be something that's based on the work that they have done in their homework and their preparation. It could be review orientated. It could be practical, memorable, adaptable, ways to take a text that has already been used and use it in a different way. And we're going to look at that also in today's lesson. So as I said, context means with text. Semiotics are methods of communication, and it's how we as humans communicate with each other. This can be something as simple as eye contact. It can be something as simple as a gesture. It can be a picture. It can be words, and it can be a complete text. But all of these things create the environment within which we understand the language. The reason I bring this up, and the reason I bring this up in a TESOL context, is if you are in a classroom and you are working with a teacher or you're working alone, you have to feel confident and comfortable enough to use all of the possible communication channels that you have in order to make sure that your message is understood and the task is completed correctly. So using the board, using a PowerPoint, using your gestures, using your words, using your physicality in the classroom are all ways of communicating with your students. So teaching a language is sometimes different from, well, it's oftentimes different, but it's different in the way that you communicate with the students. Say, for example, if you're teaching a topic like history, it might be that you go through sections of a textbook and you show the facts and figures, the times and the people who are related to it. When it's language, there needs to be a better understanding of how communication happens. It's not just verbal, it's not just written. Sometimes it is also part of other ways that you can communicate with people. So semiotics is something that we're going to deal with in this course. Situational context, as I said, you have to know exactly who you're talking to, what you're talking about, and why you're talking to them. So these are the things that we need to keep in mind. But also cultural context. So from the people who have already signed up for this course, I know that some of you are Japanese. I know that some of you are also from other countries as well. And it's going to be important for you to keep your eyes open to the differences between the way that some cultures communicate versus other cultures. Some cultures are quite high context. The Japanese culture tends to be quite high context, so wanting to know exactly what is happening and why it's happening before they communicate. Other cultures might be more open and ready to communicate and express their opinions without any prior guidance being given. The reason I bring it up is because as a teaching assistant or as an assistant language teacher, you always have to be aware that these types of differences are going to be in the classroom. You will always be given guidance by the teacher who is there, and you will always have been prepared for the activity, the task, the course-related task that you're going to do. However, it is incumbent upon you to know the culture and the type of communicative culture with which you are dealing. So let's take a look at some of the foundational aspects of teaching English as a second or additional language. And the reason I use this quote, going all the way back to 1923, almost 100 years old, is to make the point that language teaching and the understanding of how language is developed has not changed a great deal from when it was understood to be a psychological activity. So let's just use the quote from Malinowski in 1923. Each utterance is an act serving the direct aim of binding hearer to speaker by a tie of some social sentiment or other. That is true of any verbal communication. But it was about 100 years ago that we started looking at language teaching as an act of psychological connection and understanding that language itself is the way that we code our understanding of the world. And once you understand that, then we realize that it doesn't matter which language you're learning. The understanding is that everything that you say and everything that you hear is a way for you to connect with the person with whom you are speaking. Just need to keep that in mind. So the first activity I'm going to ask you to do for your out of class homework, as it were, your out of class study, is related to the quote of Malinowski. The idea that each utterance is an act serving the direct aim of binding hearer and speaker by a tie of some social sentiment or other. And all of this information is included in the document that I will share with you. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to record and transcribe a 5-minute conversation with a friend or other member of the class in English. Now, when this was going to be a face-to-face class, this was going to be something that we could do in class time you record it. But given that this is now an on-demand course, this is something that you can do at a time that is convenient to you. If you, as I note here, if you choose to use a conversation with another class member, you need to each record separate 5-minute conversations. So this can be as simple as during your lunch break, you put your iPhone on the table, if you have a recorder or some other thing, but most smartphones these days have a voice recorder. And you take 5 minutes of any conversation that you have with someone, given that they know that you're doing it, so you can't do it secretly, but you find some free minutes and you discuss with them a topic of your choosing. What I'd like you to do is to record it and then transcribe the 5-minute conversation. Transcription requires you at some point to take notice of what is happening in this conversation. Let's go back. So the whole point of this activity is that during this 5 minutes, and 5 minutes would probably be somewhere in the region of 800 to 1,000 words, depending on how much text is produced. Some people speak quickly, some people speak slowly. 5 minutes, somewhere between 800 and 1,000 words will be produced. During this transcription, it's important to note who is doing what. When you think about teaching a language, it is these language activities that you start to focus in on. And so this transcription activity will take some time, but I would like you to do that. I want you to upload the transcript to the shared folder that I will have connected to you. If not today, then by the end of the week, you'll have it available to you. I want to see the transcription in the document as it looks here. So all the details are available in our shared document. And also, I would like the audio file as well. As I note here, most apps upload in the M4A format. Some take WAV, some are MP3, depending on how you're recording it. But I want the audio file as well. The reason being that I want to check your transcription against what you have done. I need some evidence that this is what has happened. I want you to include, and again, this is in the document that I've included here. I want to know, where are you when you're doing this? Is it over lunch? Is it in a park? Is it in the Salk? Is it in an open classroom? Is it in your apartment? Where is it? Consider these points. These are important because these give you the picture of how communication occurs. Who are you talking to? Is it a friend? Is it a colleague? Is it a stranger, a class member that you've asked to join you? Please don't include their name. I don't need to know that, but I just want to know, what is your relationship to them? That's important. When we're talking about context, that's important. Why did you choose them? Are they someone who you speak to frequently? Are they people who share the same interests with you? Why did you choose them? And then the topic that you chose to talk about for this 5 minutes. Why did you choose that topic? And then after you ended, did you think it was a successful interaction? Why? Yes or no? I mean, maybe you think yes. Why? No. Why not? These are important points that I would like you to include. And I want the full transcript of your conversation. The reason being that once you get to this point of understanding all of these ideas of context, then you can start thinking about teaching a language, because all of these points of context provide you with angles to address and adapt to make any language lesson, not just English, any language lesson, more successful. All of these things: where, when, well, who, what, why, when, where, how much, how many, and which. All of these questions need to be addressed before you consider what activities you're going to do in any class. Now, a note on transcription services. So for example, the service that I use for my transcriptions is called, oops, it's not working right now, is called Otter. Now, Otter allows you, let me sign in, please. Okay, not right now, but Otter allows you to transcribe a lot of your a lot of information. You can also use, just to point out, if you go into Office 365, you have available to you over here on the right hand side, you have a dictate or transcribe option available to you as well. I have no problem with you taking your audio file, putting it to Office 365 or Otter, or Google has a transcription service as well that you can access free, and playing the audio file for it to be transcribed into a Word document. That's fine. That is perfectly reasonable. You don't have to type out everything. 1,000 words of a typed transcription, I know from my experience, takes a long time. So if you want to use a transcription service, great. What I want you to do is make sure that you have checked through all of the transcription. And so we know when it's your friend or your colleague or your class member, and when it's you, and when it's them, and when it's you. So you've tracked all the way through. Transcription services don't work perfectly. Sometimes they can join sentences together. They don't notice the difference between people's speech. And so you can have entire paragraphs that are 2 or 3 people speaking together that don't have that kind of separation. So using a transcription service or using transcription option, for example, in Office 365, fine. But please make sure that you review and edit the text carefully to make sure that all of those things are separated out. That's something that I will be checking in relation to your work. So if you want to use a transcription service or a transcription option, for example, the one that's available in 365, please do it. That's fine. What I'm asking you to do is make sure that you review and edit carefully. Okay, so that is the single-use activity where you take one conversation and you transcribe it, and then you have activities that you do it. Activity section 2 is the idea of a multiple use activity. One of the key features of language teaching is, well, we started with context. We've already done context up here. But once we start working our way towards what we want to do in the class, we do have to consider various levels of understanding. So you kind of start with phonology, the systems of sounding, and you start with that's where language begins. Most people are, the way that people learn language, most people begin with listening, and then they probably try a bit of reading. They get more confident, they try a bit of speaking. The final thing that they become confident in is writing and expression in written form. Some people never get there. Let's be honest about it. There are people who go their entire lives and couldn't write an essay or couldn't write a journal article to a standard that would be accepted. So writing is the final skill. Listening and reading are purely receptive types of language communication. So phonology, the sounding, the wording. Once we get to semantics, we get to meaning, and then context, we start looking at the larger situation. The reason I wanted to bring this up early in the course is there's nothing special about teaching English. There's nothing special about teaching language, but there's nothing special about teaching English. I know people who are teachers of German, French, Tagalog, Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, Korean. These are the things that you need to think about when you are teaching a language, because you have to deconstruct it on your side before you can reconstruct it on their side. So what we're talking about is the negotiation tactics in context and trying to negotiate meaning, because everything that you do in the class is a negotiation of meaning. Sometimes the students will not understand your pronunciation. They will not understand your choice of words. They will not get your grammatical construction. All of these things will break communication. What you have to do as a teacher is learn how to negotiate. What is the problem and how do I fix it? These are contexts of culture and situation. So it can be that it's a difference in the way that you communicate, which is culture, or it could be how you are communicating, which is situation. So we need to know where, who, and what the conversation is attempting to do. We have to be aware of choice of words, sentence organization, tone, speed, volume, and word stress. This is something that as a language teacher, you have to learn very early and keep very personally. Oftentimes, the problem in the classroom is you, not the student. And when it is the student, you are still responsible for fixing the problem. And as I note here, even other semiotics like gesture can fix these things. So let's take the example of Lexis, and this is the next activity that I would like you to do in our shared document. Okay, so what I've got are 3 excerpts from a language teaching book that I have also added to the to the document here, that I would like you to take a look at and think about in terms of the way that you understand them and the way that you would approach them as a student, and then how you might turn it around and think about how you might teach it as a teacher. Okay, so these are the quotes, and again, these are taken from a TESOL book that I used when I was doing my master's degree. What I've tried to make clear by analysis of a primitive language text is the language is essentially rooted in the reality of the culture and the tribal life and the customs of the people, and it cannot be explained without constant reference to the broader context of verbal utterance. Except number 2. The study of any language spoken by any people who live under conditions different from our own and possess a different culture must be carried out in conjunction with the study of their culture and their environment. Excerpt 3. The meaning of a word must always be gathered not from a passive contemplation of this word, but from an analysis of its functions with reference to a given culture. Okay. So these were all taken from the same text in 1923 by Malinowski. Like I said, nothing much has changed since we realized that language learning is a psychological activity rather than just being something that is educational. So there they are. They're in the shared document there. Excerpt 1, Excerpt 2, and Excerpt 3. Now, Excerpt 1, if we were to summarize these 3 things, Excerpt 1 talks about the culture. Okay, so let's see once again what it is. What I've tried to make clear by analysis of primitive language is that language is essentially rooted in the reality of the culture and the tribal life and the customs of a people, and cannot be explained without constant reference to broader context of verbal utterance. What the person is saying is that all language is culturally referential. So you can take a language from one culture to another, but all of them are essentially based in the culture from which they were developed. So Excerpt 1 is talking about culture. Excerpt 2 is looking specifically at language. So, Excerpt 2, the study of any language spoken by a people who live under conditions different from our own and possess a different culture must be carried out in conjunction with the study of their culture and their environment. So this is specifically about the way that the language is used and the way that the language is developed in that context. Excerpt 3 is talking specifically about language. So these excerpts are going from the very widest cultural base to the very narrowest, to individual words. Number 3, the meaning of a word must be gathered not from a passive contemplation of this word, but from an analysis of its functions with reference to a given culture. So all the way from the culture as a whole down to individual words are contextually based, culturally based. Okay, so that's basically how you could summarize these 3 excerpts. You go from the widest possible to the narrowest possible culture, language, lexis, but this is true of any language. So when you're starting to make decisions about what you are going to do in a language classroom, you have to start wide to small, but then you go small to wide again. So the reason why we started this course with the title, The Activity, because that is the smallest unit within an entire course. The course itself, of course, is important, and to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. But the activity is the smallest unit of any language course. So I want to focus on that first. I also just wanted to bring up, I know that many of you know this, and some of you I've you've been in my class before, so you know this point. But epistemology is very important when you are dealing with a language classroom, because it's not just like learning history or geography or science or math, where the truth is the truth. The thing happened. Language is the way that we construct our understanding of the universe. It is that grand. Well, in my opinion. I mean, you might disagree, but in my opinion. And epistemology is the science of knowledge. So epistemology is two things, basically. On the one hand, it's facts, it's things that are true. And on the other hand, it's beliefs, things that you think, your opinions. There are things in the world that are true that you don't know. And there are things in the world that you believe that are not factual. However, when you think about a new idea, a new concept, you will remember it better. This is the fundamental point of communicative language teaching. When a person uses a concept or uses a language construction, they will remember it better. The best example I can give you is, let's say you're learning Spanish and there's one word that you don't know in the text in front of you. So you use your electronic dictionary, you find out the meaning of it, you write it underneath in the language of your choosing, and then you move on. If you don't use that word, then 1 hour, 1 month, 1 year from now, you won't remember it. But if you use it in some constructive way, if you connect it with other words that you do know, then you will remember it. And this is part of the psychology of language learning. You always want, if it's something that's fundamental to the basics of the course, you want students to use it in some way. And this is the basis of the activity. The activity should stimulate students to do something with the language that they have been presented. So that's the next thing that I want to look at with the language that I've given you here. So the reason for the first topic is for you to engage with a completely new text, a text that you have designed, but a completely new text, and to transcribe it, look at the contents of it, look at the way that the turns that are being made between the person who's asking the questions, the person who's giving the information. The next one is on this idea of using texts in multiple ways. So here are the things that I want you to do in relation to it. So first, highlight in yellow. So take a look at the words here. And again, there's no right or wrong answer here. It's just what you think. From the first time that you saw it, the first time you saw these this text, just give me your honest answer. Highlight in yellow words that you might have some trouble using. Words that you maybe have seen before, but if you had to use them, it would be difficult. Maybe there's none. I don't know. Now, I would like you then to think about first year students, 18 years old, coming into this university. I want you to highlight in blue the words you think an average first year university student might have trouble using. I want you to consider from another person's perspective what might be difficult for them. If there are words that are both yellow and blue, then highlight them in green. Like I said, there's no right or wrong answer. If there's no highlighting, if there's no yellow, if there's no green, I don't mind. But I guarantee that you'll find something that you can highlight in blue. So just think from the perspective of an 18-year-old average QDI first-year student. What words in these passages do you think that they might not know? Okay. Second, for the words in yellow, if you have any, just check the dictionary. Take this opportunity and check the dictionary. That's for you. For the words in blue and green, okay, so once again, it might just be the blue for average first year students. What I would like you to do is to write out a complete sentence. Okay, so there's space on this document down here. I want you to write out a complete sentence for each word with context. Okay, so the idea of context is you want to frame the word with enough information that by reading the word and reading the sentence, the meaning of the word is clear. That's what we want. And then third, I would like you to, and this is the difficult one, and I understand that, but this is something that I would do with my students to try and get them to engage epistemologically with new vocabulary, with new words. I would like you to write, where is it here? I'd like you to combine the blue and green words. So again, there might not be any green words, but the blue words. I would like to combine them in a way that summarizes the original text of Malinowski in 2 or 3 sentences. What was he talking about? What was he talking about? Okay. This is the reason why, and at the end of this, so this is coming to the end of the this week's lesson video. The reason why I wanted to focus on these 2 activities at the very beginning is it's very time intensive. Creating a lesson for people. I have been a language teacher now for 20 years. I've worked in language schools, I've worked in high schools, I've worked in universities. Excuse me. I've worked in variety of different places. For every hour that you spend in the classroom, language teachers spend somewhere between 3 to 5 hours constructing activities based on the texts that they have to work with, the videos, the things that have been provided to them by their universities. And if nothing is provided to them, then they have to come up with it by themselves. So it's usually a 1 to 3 ratio at least. In this first lesson, with the 2 activities that I want you to undertake before we come back for lesson number 2, is to kind of consider your own use of the language, whether it is as a transcript of a conversation that you've had with a friend or a colleague, or whether it is your connection with excerpts of language teaching philosophy that are nearly 100 years old. I would like to know your connection to them, and I would like to kind of understand a little bit more about your opinions of them. That to me is the most important thing when it comes to language teaching. You have to first find the thing that is being requested of you, the target, the goal. Then you have to find a way to break it down from the perspective of the student. It's not about you. It's always about the students. And as I said before, usually if the activity doesn't go right, it's not the student's fault. It's usually you or me in this situation. Okay, so thank you very much for listening and for joining this course. We're going to ramp it up from here. It's going to get more intensive. The things that I'm going to ask you to do are going to become more intensive. I have included in our shared folder, excuse me, I've excluded in the shared folder that I'm going to send to you an article called Vita Al-Hori, The Flipped Classroom. And this is something that I want to come back to in the lesson next week, because next week's lesson is on the idea of the course, and this whole TESOL and learning how to teach English is in relation to a course reform that we're doing, and we're hoping that people from this course and from other courses that we're running will choose to join us as advanced TAs and teaching fellows to support this. But the reason behind it is this concept of the flipped classroom, whereby students do the listening and reading outside of class and then do the communicative activities inside of class. So if you wanted to know more, I'm not asked, you don't have to read it, but if you want to read it, it's right there. But we are going to be looking at this concept next week when we look at the idea of the course itself. So once again, thank you for joining. Thank you for your understanding about the on-demand class. And I'll be in contact with you during the week, either this week or next, about when and where we can actually meet in week 5 and week 8 to work on our language teaching practice. So have a good week, stay well, look after yourselves, and the next lesson will be available on Monday. Thank you very much.